Hey everyone, I'm Scott from Myelitis and welcome to the 5th video in the Scott Stories series. In this video I'm going to be talking about my recovery from MOG Antibody disease after making a good recovery from the attack which happened in March 2020. This will include the steroid tapering down from 10 milligrams of prednisolone, continuing physical therapy which was mostly running, and an appointment with the neurologist who I hadn't seen since I was last in hospital all that way back in March. So, let's get started. So, a quick recap from last episode was I had tapered down from 20 milligrams of prednisolone to 10 milligrams throughout the months of June to September, and that had given me some side effects such as joint pain in my hips and knees, especially when I was running. I had also completed a Couch to 5k program and began running regular 5Ks a few times a week. With each month my time to complete the run was improving. However, I was still having some issues, especially with my bladder, and had to self-catheterise to reduce the amount of urgency issues which I had. Overall, I did seem to be improving, but at a slower rate compared to the first few months after being discharged from the hospital. So first I'm going to be talking about the physical therapy and running. Despite hitting my goal of running 5k, I did not want to stop there. Slowly I began increasing the distance that I would run, and eventually I managed to run for 10k without stopping and having no issues, and I decided to keep running at this distance to improve my time. After a few 10k runs, my best time recorded was 56 minutes and 15 seconds, which I thought was quite good. Around this time it was starting to get dark very early as we approached into winter here in the UK, and we started having bad weather too, so I stopped running for the winter, but I looked to start it again when the weather improved. So on the physical therapy side of things, it was looking really promising. I'd already begun increasing my distance that I was running, and everything felt normal or almost back to normal. The sensitivity in my legs was still just a little bit off, but it did seem to be improving, and I believe that the running helped with this. In earlier episodes I mentioned about having weird sensations whilst running, like weird pulsing pins and needles, and I do believe that the exercise was helping to kind of bring some of the nerves back to life with the exercise. Okay, so the next section which I'm going to be talking about is the steroid tapering. On the 13th of October I had another telephone conversation with my neurologist, who said to drop down to 7.5 milligrams of prednisolone from the 14th of October, and then down to 5 milligrams on the 14th of November. What the plan was to maintain the 5 milligram level of prednisolone until the next appointment with the neurologist, which was on the 7th of December, and this was going to be the first in-person meeting that I've had with him since being in hospital. So on the 7th of December I met the neurologist to discuss what the next phase of the treatment was going to be, and he explained that we needed to do another set of blood tests, including one to again check for MOG antibodies to see if they were still present in my blood. He also wanted me to drop to 2.5 milligrams of prednisolone and to maintain this until we had the results from the antibody test back. If the MOG antibody test came back with a high or medium number of antibodies, then I would stay on the 2.5 milligrams of prednisolone and go on to a preventative treatment as well, just so I didn't have another attack, as the antibodies were still there and could cause damage. If the antibody test showed a low or no MOG antibodies in my bloodstream, then I would continue to taper from steroids completely. We also discussed having another MRI scan in March 2021, just to have a 12-month comparison to the ones taken when I was in hospital during the first attack. So now I'm going to be talking about an eye test and an OCT scan which I had. Now, I've never mentioned before that I've had any issues with my eyes, and honestly I haven't. I've heard plenty of people who suffer from MOG antibody disease having issues with their eyes and vision, and I've never had any issues with that, either during my attack or throughout my recovery. It's always just seen completely fine. Now, a few months prior in August, I had a reminder pop up that I was due a regular eye test, just part of an annual checkup really, and I booked an appointment and went to it, and they recommended having an OCT scan done just for a small fee, just to see if there was any issues. Although no lesions were found in my optical nerves when I had the MRI scans in hospital, I do know that MRI scans can be a bit problematic sometimes when picking up lesions in that area, So I thought this would be useful, as I know that MOG antibody disease inflammation can attack the optical nerve, so I agreed. So I went and had the OCT scan, and the optician reviewed the results and found something in the scan that they wanted a second opinion from my neurologist from, which was involving the optical disc. The optician explained that this might be affecting my peripheral vision, and so I was taken for a further test to check the peripheral vision just to see if there was any issues. Thankfully, I went and did the test and there was no issues, and I was told that my peripheral vision was fine. Later in the week, a letter was sent from the opticians to my neurologist, and then I soon received another letter back from the hospital for an appointment with the neuro-eye clinic, which was for Friday the 11th of September. I went to this appointment, and there I had another set of eye tests done at the hospital, and this included a visual acuity test, visual field test, and another OCT scan. Afterwards, I was called into the office to discuss the results with a consultant, and thankfully he explained that my optical nerve was not showing any signs of damage, which was really promising. But what I would say is, if you are recovering from MOG antibody disease and you haven't felt like you've had any issues with your eyes, it might just be worthwhile going and having an OCT scan at an optician's or at the hospital, if possible, just to double check that there hasn't been any damage to your optical nerves, which could be causing issues for you either now or in the future, and just so that you're aware of it. And next I'm going to talk about the main problematic area again, which was my bladder. Now, thankfully during these last few months it did seem to improve a little bit, and I found that I no longer needed to self-catheterize as much. To explain this, basically you're supposed to self-catheterize after going to the toilet and measure how much the urine the catheter drains, and depending on this amount there is a recommended number of times you need to catheterize per day. After I was discharged from hospital, the amount of urine which I was releasing after going to the toilet was in the range of suggesting that I should be catheterizing daily, and that's what I did, usually between 1 to 3 times a day, before bed and then during exercise, or if I was going out for a walk or going out somewhere. During these last few months, the amount of urine actually decreased to below this daily level, which meant that I only needed to self-catheterize weekly, which was a really good improvement, and it's obviously less of an issue for me now that I only have to do it once a week instead of once a day. So that was great, and it was nice to see some improvement in the most problematic area for me. So I'm really happy with that. And it was also around this time when my urgency issues started to improve. I was no longer getting as many urges that I needed to go, and many of these sort of fake urges that I've been having in the past, they weren't tending to happen as much. So overall, it's a sign that my bladder actually might have been returning to normal. I was still withholding a little bit of urine, but it's still great improvement that I only had to self-catheterize once a week, so it was great progress there. And as you can see, this is around 9 months after the attack, so again, recovery taking a really long time to happen, and I think there's an expectation sometimes that we'll recover in the same sort of time span as to how long it took the damage to occur. So in my case, it took 3 to 4 days of not being able to urinate from the sort of start of the first symptoms, and then it took me 9 months to recover. So it just shows you, if you are recovering from this condition, just you do need to give it time, and if not months, years in some cases, because you can always make improvements in the future, but you really do have to be patient with these sort of things. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit more about my myelitis and where the idea to start this project came from. So I mentioned before in previous episodes about after I was discharged, I started looking into and researching a lot of the conditions. So for example, in my case, transverse myelitis and MOG antibody disease, and also some other related conditions as well. And from what I could find, most of this information was coming from charitable foundations, and there doesn't seem to be too many content creators or individuals who, for example, were writing their own blogs or have their own YouTube channels. I did look for a lot of other content producers for MOG antibody disease and transverse myelitis, and there doesn't seem to be too many. The only personal content creator that I could find on YouTube was Sarah Todd Hammer, who was initially diagnosed with transverse myelitis and then has been re-diagnosed in recent years with AFM. So my thoughts were that if I was going to be living with this condition for the rest of my life, then I might as well use all this time that I spent researching and reading all these articles and looking into all these conditions, that if I could that I could take all this information that I had and then combine it with my own experience and put it out in a way which might be a bit more useful to other people. So that's what basically the plan was behind my myelitis. So a summary of this episode was that I had managed to run 10k for a few times, but I had to stop the running due to the weather and light as we moved into winter. The tapering of steroids was going well with little side effects, and I was now down to 2.5 milligrams of prednisolone whilst I waited for the results of the antibody test to come back. And I had started my myelitis to help others recovering with similar conditions, whilst raising awareness and plans to raise funds for research and charity going forwards. So I'm going to leave it here for today. Thank you for watching the video, and if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and also share it to any of your friends or people who you know who are also suffering from rare neuro-immune conditions such as MOG Antibody disease, Transverse myelitis, etc. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.